Well, again, and you've heard certainly Naomi and I referenced the first panel because there is a lot of crossover. And one of the pieces that I wanted to raise for this group as well was this idea around the intersectional advocacy, which you've talked about, Imani, and how you say that word a lot. And I'm always concerned that people don't really understand what that means. And often it's race and gender, and maybe sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. But as I mentioned earlier, I think we leave out class too, right? And sometimes things that we attribute to race are in fact a class issue. So as you think about how you do your work, what are some ways in which we can carry that message forward? Certainly national and local organizations, but some of the national organizations that have more resources are slow to come to this in terms of understanding what intersectional advocacy is. And so I'm curious to know how you think we can push forward, because it may mean that we need from the local communities to push up towards some of the larger national organizations who get the attention, who can carry this message forward in a different way than we can locally. Imani?
Sure. I think that's a wonderful question. I'm glad that you asked it, because that's something. Because honestly, that's a big thing to think about. And a lot of times, we hear a lot of criticism of large organizations saying that they're not inclusive of communities, and ways to and then these large organizations try to figure out something, but in the process of doing that, they end up tokenizing these organizations, and then that's a whole different thing. And so, I think one of the things that we can do is really it's really thinking about building coalition together, and sincerely building coalition together, like we're not running out of things, but that we actually want to change the movement. And I've been really fortunate. I feel so grateful now that I'm at Affinity and we're a smaller organization, that I have a great relationship with Howard Brown, and they're able to help support us when we're in partnerships, like in Pride. They're able to help support in ways that are also really helpful. But I think also when you're a larger organization, really thinking about when you are asking for support, like saying that you want to have access to a community that as a large organization you don't typically have access to really think about what you're asking of this organization, and to make sure that you're paying for these things as well. I think that's also really important when we're talking about young people and asking for the services of young people and the experiences of young people. So often in academia especially, we have these studies, these surveys, and we say, this work that I'm doing, this is going to make your life better. But right now, here today, this young person that's experiencing homelessness, what they have, this experience, is something that is worth so much more than the cookies you're going to give them at the end of this. And they need that, because from their perspective, they're not sure what your research is going to do, if anything, and to really treat everything like what it's worth. There are some things we pay for and some things that we don't, and we really need to think about what the things are that we don't pay for, and really start treating people with the respect they deserve. And I think that's another part that's really important.
Abbe, what about
Yeah, no, that's so interesting, and I really just love what you said, which is really good. I think coalitions are really critical, and coalitions that help really create a safe space so you can really learn from each other. Because you have to be able in the coalition to have some of these difficult conversations and to understand, and that's hard. And as we're a national organization, but we're really kind of a small organization. We're like less than 50 employees, spread across the, So we're a very small organization. Most of our work is actually done by volunteers who train, extensive training to provide the services when young people reach out to us. But being part of a coalition is really helpful. I will say, after the horrible massacre in Orlando, many organizations came together, and there was this listserv of many organizations from lots of different places, and it was amazing. It's the first time in a long time that I've been on a listserv where everybody was so incredibly. We were all devastated. Everyone was dealing with the issue, but everybody was so incredibly respectful and wanting to really hear what other people were thinking about, because we were writing letters. We were taking stands about how we were going to talk about this thing. and what we were going to ask for change, and it was amazing because you could tell there were so many people represented, and not that every letter reflected everything, but I think everybody learned something, and just something as basic as, how are we going to all come together and ask about what kind of gun control we wanted? So I have to say, I think the coalition is the way we have to go, and creating a space to really learn from each other is part of it.
Yeah, kind of what both these ladies said is definitely we have to work together. And I think, like you were saying, that's definitely what came out of the Orlando tragedy to me. Well, two things really came out of the Orlando tragedy to me. Well, number one, it was that the organizations, big and small, were like, hey, we need to work together to address what's going on. And number two, I feel like it was a wake-up call to mainstream LGBT societies that our young people are dying at our feet. The majority of those Orlando victims were young people of color, and it was just right in everybody's face. Quit walking in these neighborhoods disregarding these young people because they are truly in pain, and unless we all come together and work together, tragedies like this will continue to happen. So I feel that what they said just hit it right on the nail. We have to work together. We have to listen to these young people. We have to pay people for their services, and we have to work together.
Naomi, do you get any sort of information coming your way around coalition work, or how much has been done? Because that's how any major victory has been won, has been around coalition work. And earlier on the first panel, we talked about, and Jim alluded to, we didn't go into a lot of detail, but that certainly here in Illinois, we know that the first couple times marriage equality was being pushing forward, it was not done in an inclusive manner. And it didn't work, right? And so people regrouped and figured out what they needed to do, and they built coalitions that were more inclusive and depthful. So because it's more than just making the picture, like making sure we have the right optics, which is what we generally stop at, but how do you get people involved in the work in a meaningful manner? And is that anything that's coming your way with regard to how people are working?
Yeah, I mean, I think coalition work, as amazing as it is, and I think it is the key to success, is really messy and it's really hard. And Tyrone is, and we all are nodding, right? Tyrone is not on this panel. Tyrone is in the back. But one thing that I think is great is, so Tyrone and someone from the task force are doing criminal justice reform work, right? And there's a huge coalition that's working on that. And so rarely does anything LGBT show up in the broader coalition's frame, right? But Tyrone and the person from the task force, they show up. And they're not saying, but what about us over here, right? They're saying, this is our community's needs too. And then come around, maybe 3 months later, maybe 6 months later, there is an opportunity for folks, everyone then, to talk about an LGBT issue, or how this impacts the LGBT specifically. And I think that what is important about that is that we have to show up even if our names aren't being said specifically. And I think about what Myles said around gun violence. I think many in the LGBT community, I was in New York right after what happened in Orlando, and several folks from the anti-violence community said, I'm sorry, profiling, no buy, no fly, that doesn't actually fit our community. Many of our community members are, Muslim, Arab, LGBT people, and so they're now going to be profiled as a result of this. And we have been profiled for years, or having police at the LGBT center doesn't actually make many in our community feel safer, right? Police are the perpetrators of much violence against LGBT people, specifically LGBT people of color. And we have to struggle with that. And so how then do we talk about gun violence and talk about gun control while acknowledging the messiness that exists? And I think that coalition work is hard, but it's so important. And so I think it's recognizing let's come together for this one thing and then be in tension with each other again, and then come together for a thing. And it doesn't have to be a coalition that lives forever. It could be a marriage coalition, or it can be a coalition that's just messy. And I think that that's okay. But I think if you're going to do intersectional work, there are going to be moments where you're like, I just can't go there with you, or I'm going to go there, but I'm not going to speak because that isn't something I can actually say. And that's hard.
Right. No, I think that's absolutely, that makes a lot of sense to me. One of the things that we, again, referencing the earlier panel, and I just want to take a moment and remind folks, if you have any questions, to send them our way, because we have about 15 minutes left.